This is Divine Lifestyles with Tara Magalski. What is a divine lifestyle? Passion, purpose, and living in alignment with your truth. Thank you guys for tuning into Divine Lifestyles, transforming your life with purpose. As you know, on this podcast, we share stories that feed your spirit, mind, and body. And peeps who are listening, you know the deal. If you like what you hear, go ahead right after this interview or now, subscribe, rate, and review. This really helps us to reach more people. Today's guest is Thais Guimaraes. It is a tongue twister for me, but she is a beautiful woman that I met online. And I'm very happy to have you here today. So thank you so much for being my guest.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So Thais is a women's leadership coach, yoga, meditation teacher, mentor, and leader. And she's really cool because she supports healers, teachers, coaches, trainers, and heart-centered women to optimize their lifestyle, create spiritually badass businesses, make a bigger impact, and lead from an authentic feminine power so they can be the change they want to see in the world. Her mission is to evoke a change in consciousness in order for every woman to feel empowered to live their purpose, shine their light, and be a catalyst for greatness. So tell me, Thais, how are you doing that through your work?
Yeah, so I've made it a purpose to build my business as much offline as possible. I just see way too many beautiful entrepreneurs hide behind their computer and spend the majority of their time and resources on Facebook and social media. And the danger in that is, one, it's harder to connect with people through social media. It requires a lot more sales in order for people to actually care about you online. And it's very hard to stand out online, but also it keeps us stuck. It keeps us stuck behind a computer. So I've made it a point to build my business as much in person as possible. And luckily I live in a beautiful city of Los Angeles. So I have an opportunity to be constantly meeting new people through my workshops and speaking engagements. And I host a monthly dinner party and all these events in the city that allows me to connect with women in person. And then if they feel like a good fit, I will invite them and enroll them into my programs.
Awesome. And are your programs online or are they in person?
So right now my focus is on one-on-one coaching. And so that I use Skype and phone as the vehicle for communication and connection, as well as email, of course, and text messaging. But I don't meet them in person only because I do want to create a business that allows me to travel whenever I want. So in that sense, I guess it would be online, but it's not online because it's not like a group program, like a group coaching program that is just on Facebook and monthly calls.
Awesome. So let me just learn a little bit more about you. Where are you from? And how did you get into this line of work? I'm sure you have a really interesting story.
I do, yeah. So I was born in Brazil, hence my name. My mom actually never imagined that we would move to the US, but we did. We moved to the US when I was 7, and I moved to a small town right outside of DC in Maryland, and that's where I grew up. I just moved to Los Angeles about 5 months ago, and I started in the coaching business back when the story starts back when I was in college, and I was experiencing some pretty serious anxiety in the form of binge eating and emotional eating, and that was completely unnatural to me. I've never had problems with food, and so the fact that I was now gorging on pizza, and I would go to the dining hall and grab a whole thing of cookies and stuff it in my pocket and eat while I was walking to class, and no one could see how many cookies I was eating. And it was just a very dark, tumultuous time, and I didn't understand what was going on. And I hit a pretty rock bottom where I was losing a lot of my really close friends. I had mononucleosis. I couldn't stop eating and binge eating and having that anxious binge anorexic cycle. And I fell hard. I fell on my knees, and I said to whoever was around, to God, right? Because I didn't really believe in God at the time. And I said, I need help. I need help. And I got a response. And the response was, you know, Thais, you're going to be okay. And now I laugh and say, really? That's all I got? But in the moment, that was all I needed to try something different. And so I decided to endeavor down the path, a very radical path called self-love. And what could that look like? And so I started trying out yoga, and that's where everything changed for me. When I started doing yoga and realizing, wait a minute, there's a connection here between my mind and my body, and this whole thing actually has a reason than just to be skinny. I started doing yoga, and then I started entering this wellness world and this conversation about what it could look like to be in sisterhood instead of think that women were just about drama. How could I engage in self-love practices that had nothing to do with bubble baths and everything to do with setting boundaries and communicating my needs and what are feelings. So I started going into coaching because I wanted to support women who are also going through emotional eating. That's where it all started for me. And then it transformed. After a while, I realized that emotional eating is just a symptom of a larger cause. And I got more passionate about the cause. I didn't want to talk to women about what to eat. I wanted to talk to women about what made them alive, what made them feel happy. And it kind of just progressed from there. I tell my clients all the time, don't expect your business to be a static thing. It evolves over time. And so now I work predominantly with female entrepreneurs who are ready to make it big and stand big in their business and not feel that lack of self-worth and lack of self-confidence and lack of self-love stop them from being a true catalyst in the world.
So when did you basically transfer from working with women who were struggling with eating issues to women entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so it was a gradual shift. I went from emotional eating to, all right, well, I didn't want to just work with women around food. I wanted to support women with their purpose. Because once you kind of get aligned with your purpose and your soul message, right, then it becomes easier for you to handle all forms of anxiety, from any level of addiction to eating and just binge watching and all of those ways that we numb ourselves. So that's the first shift, was working with women around purpose. And then I realized I was gravitating myself more towards female entrepreneurs because there's something brilliant about female entrepreneurs where they have a zest for growth. And that type of zest is not only infectious, but it's how we're going to change the world. Female entrepreneurs are not okay with the status quo. They want something bigger for themselves and for the world. And I just fell in love with that ambition. But we do want to balance that ambition with a lot of that feminine power, which is that sense of surrender and sense of okay with the journey, and not get so caught up in the results that we make ourselves sick and stressed until we get to this arbitrary time in the future where we're going to be happy. So my business has gone to, I think, maybe 2 or 3 evolutions before it got to where it is now. But I've been in this place for about over a year now, and it's just the best. It's the best.
Yes, I completely understand how the business evolves and it grows and it morphs into something bigger than you could have even imagined when you started it. So I know I wanted to talk to you. I really love this topic. How do you go from broken to open? Because I think in our society, that's a tough one, especially living in New York. People are guarded. So could you talk on that topic a bit?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that has transformed me personally was understanding that there was no shame in my brokenness. So one of the big stories that I've carried with me since childhood, and I can actually remember the instance where I started believing this, is that there was something deeply wrong with me. And by being deeply wrong, I could find a hole in my heart that I had no idea how to fall in love with. Because how do you fall in love with yourself when you feel like there's something deeply wrong with you? Like you don't even deserve to be here. And I think that was part of my binge eating, was I wanted to expand my body and ground myself on the earth to prove to my mind that I did deserve to be here. And I was going to take up as much space as possible to challenge that story. And, you know, what I've learned from the process, and now what I get to support women with, is that it is actually our darkest, our most deepest, darkest fears and inadequacies that can actually be the light for others. We first just have to allow ourselves to know that it's there. I think that's a huge first step, because most of us are completely numb to it, right? We don't even want to look at it. We want to stay positive and we want to focus on what's good. And we don't even want to endeavor into the conversation that there is actually a deep feeling within you that feels like you are a fraud, that feels like you are wrong, it feels like you're never going to be successful. And just like I love the analogy. It's kind of like going to a party and knowing that your ex-boyfriend is there. If you try to avoid your ex-boyfriend at this party at all costs, right? At the entire party, always looking over your shoulder to see if your ex-boyfriend is going to see you, who truly has the power in that circumstance? It's certainly not you. It's the ex-boyfriend, because you're constantly running away from him and looking over your shoulders for him. And in the same way, if we try to hide our darkness and pretend it's not there, who's really running the show? And that's that darkness. And so you're gonna unconsciously sabotage yourself and find ways to push people away or to push your greatness away because you don't believe that you even deserve it. So it's important that the first step is just to acknowledge that there is a place within you that feels this way, that feels broken, and not get so scared that that is all of who you are. Because you're not your brokenness. You are this beautiful, messy, delicious, sexy you that has nothing to do with your brokenness and has nothing to do with your light. It has everything to do with all of it. And when we can just start accepting that that's there, we start taking away the power from it.
Yeah, I love that. I just did a speaking engagement and I spoke on this exactly. And just standing up and being able to share your truth and say, hey, listen, it's actually not that scary and it's actually quite normal, can be really liberating to others. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what does overcoming your fears look like?
It means not overcoming fears.
Okay.
So, I think we kind of idolize fearlessness. Yeah, we see women that are doing amazing things and we imagine that they must be fearless. And that in order for us to be great, we also have to be fearless. But what if fear never goes away? What if fear is always there with you? And so instead of seeing it as something that needs to go away and something that debilitates you, see it as a friend, as a person who comes into your life every time you're about to do something amazing, just to remind you, hey, you're doing something amazing right now. So just watch out, I love the fear is breath on pause, right? It means that we're not breathing. It means that we're holding tight. I also love that whole fear is evidence appearing real. Right? A lot of our fears are created, are man-made, and it's a completely normal function of the brain. It is just a natural part of our deep primal instincts to stay safe, and it's not going to go away. And in fact, we don't want it to go away. People that are truly fearless, they're the sociopaths, right? Truly fearless are crazy people. They're not people that we want to look up to as role models. So it's not about annihilating. Yeah, it's not about annihilating the fear, just knowing that it's there and then acting anyway.
That's really funny. I didn't think of it that way, but now that you brought it up, you're right. The completely fearless people are the sociopaths.
Yeah.
That's a different prism to look at it. I appreciate that.
Anytime.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you really made the transition and shift into saying yes and really embodying your body. Mm-hmm. Because as we know, as we struggle with food issues, I mean, we're women, we struggle with our bodies, period, right? It's part of our psyche. So tell me a little bit about your experience.
So when I was binge eating, at first, I was in complete denial that there was any problem at all. And I thought it was just going to go away. So one of the ways that I thought it was just going to go away was to starve myself. So I would calculate how much I binged. I would count how many calories was in the binge. And usually it's in like the 5,000 calorie range because I didn't just binge on one cookie, right? I mean, we're talking like non-controlling. And then I would calculate how many calories I would have to eat that week in order to compensate so that I didn't gain weight. And it worked. I didn't gain weight. But obviously, by depriving myself of food and starving, I would only binge more. So that method didn't work very long. So then my next method, after I stopped denying that it was a problem and realized that this wasn't just going to go away one day, was deciding to not fight it. I decided to not fight it. So when I binged, I would not deprive myself the next day. And I really made a conscious effort to not even count my calories. Just by not fighting it. It took a while. This is a 7-year journey for me. It's not like I just went totally okay, because that's not how that works. In order for something to transform us, it's got to dig deep into our soul. And this was me in binge eating. So once I stopped fighting it, that's when things started to change, because I realized that fighting my darkness and fighting my anxiety was not the way. So I stopped the binging cycle, and I would just binge, and then I would just eat normally. Now, the whole embodying your body can feel very uncomfortable when we define ourselves by our body. So if we define our worth by how much we weigh, if we define our worth by our fat in our bellies or by how we look, then of course we're going to get very attached to how it looks. The way I like to think of it as, if you identify yourself as an Olympic skier, you're going to get very attached to your results on the slopes. You're not going to even really be able to enjoy it as much, because you're going to be constantly thinking about the numbers and how fast you're going, and if you're, competing better than everyone else, right? That's just the way our mind works. As long as we identify ourselves with something, we're going to make sure that we're doing a very good job of it. So if we continue to identify ourselves fully with our body, we're going to want it to look good. So what we have to do is start identifying ourselves with something else, with something deeper. And that helps with meditation. That helps when we do any spiritual practice, yoga or whatever, that allows us to connect with something much deeper than ourselves, something that's not our thoughts, something that's not our body. And then we can start to take away the hook that we have to have our bodies look a certain way, because we realize we are not our bodies. The best thing that happens from that then is that we start taking good care of our body without feeling like we have to look a certain way in order to get validated by the world. So that's kind of where it starts.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. We certainly are not our bodies, right? Because our bodies are completely changing. So we're tiny babies. Now I'm in my 30s, and my body's going to keep changing until I pass on, right? Mm-hmm. So we definitely cannot be our bodies. But what would you say, because we live in a culture where there is a lot of emphasis on what we look like. Mm-hmm. We're being told that the girl on the cover of the magazine is perfection. Mm-hmm. So for any young women who are tuning in and listening, what would be, one piece of advice that you could give them in this day and age, in this culture where you look at Instagram and you see the validation comes from the gorgeous naked photos. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to a young girl who's listening, who's struggling to find her worth?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. I even think of that question as what would I have told myself, right, back in college. And I think one of the things I would suggest is called an information detox. Mm-hmm. So when we look at every magazine and want to be that person, we are continuously putting energy outside of ourselves, wishing that we were somebody else. And that gets to be very exhausting because we cannot be anybody else. And it leads into a cycle of where we feel really bad about ourselves. So why not try doing a 5-day information detox where you do not look at magazines, you don't buy magazines, you try not to look at Instagram for as much as possible. Maybe you allow yourself 30 minutes a day of looking at Instagram, or you just decide to unfollow people that trigger you, that make you feel really bad about yourself, and see how that feels. Because it's so funny how we think we have to feel this way. Like, oh, I feel really bad because I look at this woman's Instagram and she always makes me look bad. Then why are you continuing to do that activity that makes you consistently feel bad? A lot of times we think, well, that's how I will be motivated to work out. We see this a lot, right? If I follow a lot of fit people, I will be motivated to work out. But I don't feel like that's really true. Motivation that comes from negativity, from punishment, is not known to be effective. Look at children. When we yell at a child and call it bad and wrong and fat, we can never imagine calling a 3-year-old girl fat, right? That just seems ludicrous to us. But what if we did? Can you imagine how she would go about acting? Can you imagine how she would go about behaving in her life? It would not be very empowering, right? And she would grow up to be very self-hating. So why are we doing that to ourselves? So if there's somebody that really triggers you, if there's somebody that really activates you, unfollow them. Give yourself that power that you can motivate yourself because you love yourself. Now that's a much stronger motivation. I really realize how true this is, that we cannot hate ourselves to change. We have to love ourselves to change. And it's an irony there, because a lot of people say, well, if I love myself, then why would I be motivated to change? But love is a very powerful motivator. And when we love ourselves so much, we don't want to mistreat our bodies. We want to go to the gym, or we want to eat healthy, or we want to at least stop hating ourselves when we love what we have so much.
Yeah, I love that. That's true. So let's talk a little bit about busting through limiting beliefs. I think that's really important in every aspect of our lives.
Well, I would say, part of limiting beliefs, I think that the reason why we want to bust through limiting beliefs is because our thoughts then create our actions, right? We think a thought and then we act. And so if we're acting from a place of limitation, we're only perpetuating that limitation. We are allowing it to be there. We are giving it power to be there. And so the first step is just noticing what the beliefs are, right? Noticing what are your limiting beliefs? What are you really believing? I work with this a lot with women around money. What are your beliefs around money? We have so many. For example, money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard to make money. These are all stories that we were told when we were younger that we still carry with us. And the amazing thing is we have something called confirmation bias. It's a cognitive bias that our brain tricks us into, which is when we have a belief, we now see it in the real world. If you truly believe that money is hard to come by, you are going to see evidence of it in the world, because what we see in the world is simply our perception of it. So if that's the case, if you wanted to believe something different, in order to change that belief, you just have to start seeing it in the real world. So what I do with my women is, if you have the belief that only skinny people are happy, and then in order for you to be happy, you have to be skinny, well, let's look at examples in the world where that isn't happy. And it's so prevalent. We can see there are so many skinny women out there who are miserable. So when we start looking for examples outside of us that reinforce the positive belief, then we can start to change our perception of the world. I can remember a time when I was skinny. I was the lowest that I weighed because I had mono, so I wasn't eating. So I was weighing in like the 118s. Okay, so for me, this was skinny, whatever that meant. And I was miserable. So now, my binge eating is not something that goes away. It is just now something that I've developed a beautiful relationship with. So if there's a time when I want to binge, when I'm like, oh my God, I really want that pint of ice cream in the fridge and I want to eat all of it, I think to myself, what's really going on here? Because I know that binge eating is just a call for something deeper, right? And that's just a belief that I carry, that by binge eating, I'm going to feel better. Well, I now know that that's not true. So what's really going on? And now what's a belief that I can now carry that's going to support me in not eating the ice cream? Maybe the belief that I love myself so much, I don't need that ice cream for support. Or I love myself so much, I'm going to sit here and really investigate what I'm believing rather than stuffing myself with ice cream. So it's all about noticing the beliefs and then choosing, now that you know that it exists, to see something different within yourself and outside of yourself so you can start shifting that perception.
Awesome. You and I preach the same thing, awareness, becoming very aware of why, and really getting clear and seeing the connection between your thoughts and emotions and not reacting. So thank you so much. That was so amazing for you. I mean, I felt like you were literally my brain speaking. I was like, okay, yes. We very much have very similar messages. So tell me what's on your mission? Where are you going to be in the next 5 years? What are your goals?
Yeah, so right now I am working on a book. I would love to have my book published by 2017. People say, well, why not next year? Well, I just have a lot going on. And so I want my book out into the world. I think this is going to be a really revolutionary book, but I'm also giving myself space and time to play with it. I'm also looking to speak a lot more next year. You know, this year was focused on my move and feeling really settled in Los Angeles. And I'm one of those people that I'm a homebody and I'm an introvert. So even though I love going out into the world, I first need to feel like I have a solid ground base. And this is another thing too. When we can fully understand our idiosyncrasies, we punish ourselves less. So in college, I thought that there was something really wrong with me because I didn't want to go to parties every freaking night. You know, I didn't have fun going to frat parties and getting trashed, but that's what all my friends did. And I thought that that's what I had to do. So there was something wrong with me for not wanting to do it. And as I got older, I realized, you know what? This is just who I am. And now that I get to embrace my introverted side or my homebody side, I actually go out a lot more because I'm honoring my limitations. I'm honoring who I am. And that gives me permission then to go out whenever I feel like going out, and it's going to feel really yummy for me. So 2015 has been a lot about establishing foundation and getting super comfy here in LA. And 2016 is going to be amazing. I have a few programs that I want to put out into the world. I want to do a beautiful leadership retreat to invite women who want to speak up on stage and write books, and how do we get you out there and feeling confident in your message. Oh my gosh, what else is going on? I want to be flying to New York City more. I love New York, and I feel like LA, New York, they're such sister cities. And so I want to get to know New York more and create my community there. So there's just a lot of exciting things going on.
Awesome. So where can our listeners go to find you online, to keep up with you, possibly book you to speak, and or work with you privately?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's coachthais.com. It's coach, and then it's THAIS, kind of like Thailand without the land and added S. And you can actually sign up on my website. I'm currently offering my beautiful people a free guided meditation to help you stand in your power so that you feel really focused and productive in your day. And that's available for only a limited time on my website now. So coachthais.com. And then, yeah, all my work is there. Everything that I've got going on, all my events in LA is there. So you can get all the information you need right there.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, everyone who's listening, please check her out because she's definitely a soul sister of mine. And I can't wait to collaborate with you and see the beautiful things that we can bring into the world. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you, darling.
And for everyone who's listening, you know the deal. Please, if you like these little gems, or if you know someone who is struggling with binge eating or emotional eating, please share this message with them. Share the link, share the actual video on YouTube. And go ahead right now and subscribe, rate, and review. And I will see you all next time. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe to this channel to get your weekly fix for all you spiritual gangsters. Any questions or comments, go to my site at taramagalski.com. Drop me a note. I'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned for next week. I got the good stuff.